You're not going to get my PowerPoint today. You're going to get my actual notes, and I just want to kind of quickly go over with you how to informally change the Constitution. We talked about formally changing the Constitution yesterday in our PowerPoint notes. Now we're going to discuss the informal ways to do it. So changing the Constitution informally without adding amendments, that's what that means. So that's pretty important. Circle that so you understand what that means. When you say informally, you're changing the meaning of the Constitution without actually changing the Constitution formally with amendments. And so the reason why we do this is due to difficulties of formally changing the Constitution, informal ways developed. Here's the 4 informal ways that we change the Constitution. First one, an act of Congress. And I put up here the Judiciary Act of 1789. And also you can put up here the Patriot Act. Patriot Act, we define terrorism in a new way. So therefore, we were informally changing the meaning of the Constitution that way, without adding an amendment. We changed the meaning of the Constitution by, if the government thought you were a terrorist, they had the right to go ahead and bug your phone and things of that nature. So they were informally changing the meaning of the Constitution there. The second one, judicial rulings, is, think about this, Plessy versus Ferguson. The Constitution now says desegregation or segregation now when you have Plessy versus Ferguson, because remember, separate but equal. So now the meaning of the Constitution is, part of the Constitution, the Supreme Court said that separate but equal is legal. So now the Constitution deals with segregation. Didn't mention it, now it does because Plessy versus Ferguson. Brown versus Board of Education. Now the congregation talks about desegregation, inequality, and that necessarily wasn't in the Constitution. And so this, again, a judicial ruling changed the meaning of the Constitution. Texas versus Johnson. When you talk about the First Amendment, freedom of speech, and in the freedom of speech, the amendment does not talk about burning the American flag, but Texas versus Johnson gives you the right to burn the American flag. Next one's presidential actions, and these are actions after World War II, executive privilege, impoundment, things of this nature. That's what the president was doing. Think of executive orders in regard to Vietnam. And that's what we mean by presidential actions. You're supposed to formally go to war. Executive actions after World War II, the president has gone ways around that, changing the meaning of the Constitution because we've gotten around what it is you're supposed to be doing by having Congress declare war. Customs and traditions. And what do I mean by that? The presidential cabinet, this is not in the Constitution, but we've changed it to include these things. Political parties. The Constitution doesn't say we have to have 2 political parties, or Democrats, Republicans, but that's all that we typically have. So, again, development of political parties has kind of, again, changed the meaning of the Constitution, especially when you talk about the money allocated in campaigns from the Constitution to different political parties. That's what we mean by that, changing that. Senatorial courtesy, that has to deal with when you're trying to get or appoint a judge, a federal judge in a state. The president will ask the 2 senators in that state, and if one of the senators says no, then you can't go along with the appointment process. So you have to get senatorial courtesy. A legislative veto, again, not necessarily in the Constitution, the process of how this works. We now have this. And then nominating conventions weren't mentioned in the Constitution. They were part of it. Now they're kind of meaningless. But again, all these customs and traditions have changed the meaning of the Constitution. We don't add amendments for these things because it's just easier to informally change the meaning of the Constitution. We'll go over the reasons why a little bit, but to formally change the Constitution takes up to 7 years. Informally changing the Constitution is much easier. And to informally change the Constitution, you need a simple majority and you need a supermajority to do it formally. Those are just 2 big reasons right there why people don't want to, why they like informally changing the Constitution. You'll get your questions tomorrow in class. Have a wonderful night. Don't forget to watch Federalism 1.